Samael Aun Weor, The Magic of the Runes, Part 2. Chapter 18. The Deformed Giant Polyphemus. Men and gods, you must remember that damned land where the deformed giant Polyphemus filthily abided. He was always accompanied by 100 of his brothers who were equivalent in his cruelty and monstrous stature. Ulysses, the cunning warrior, destroyer of citadels, was sheltered with his people in the cave of this ogre, who started devouring all the guests without respecting any rule of hospitality. However, Ulysses, the sagacious warrior who was skillful, shrewd, and sharp in every type of mischief, achieved the inebriation of this enormous giant, who was satiated with human flesh, with delicious wine. So, the monster was sleeping on his back on the ground close to his cave and vomiting wine mixed with scattered flesh of those that he had inhumanely sacrificed. A good opportunity exists for any warrior who is within the mouth of the wolf, and it is clear that the king of Ithaca, Ulysses, knew how to take advantage of such a situation. It is said by those with wisdom that this sly warrior, cunning, artful as no other, took a sharp-pointed stake which was hardened by fire and stabbed it without any consideration into the frontal eye of this colossus. Afterwards, he fled with haste far away from that cavern. Aeneas, the illustrious Trojan man, verified the reality of the former story when he was navigating towards the land of Licinium. He disembarked with his people on that inhospitable land, and he listened to this story from the lips of Achimenides. He saw Polyphemus appearing high up on the mountain. This blind giant was walking with his sheep, heaving his vast bulk down from a high cliff, towards the shore he knew so well. Possessed by panic, the Trojans cut the cables, embarked in concealment, and took with them Achimenides. The giant heard the struggling of the oars, and though not able to pursue the navigators, he raised a great clamor as when a lion roars, and then 100 Titans appeared, similar in stature to the high cedars or pines which adorn the sacred forest of Diana. These are, then, the Titans, the giants of antiquity, the ante- and post-Diluvian Gibrim of the Bible. The 5 statues of Bamiyan, which are discovered by the famous Chinese traveler Haiwen Tseng, come into my memory. The largest is made to represent the first root race of mankind. Its protoplasmic, semi-ethereal, semi-physical, body was commemorated in hard everlasting stone, for the instruction of future generations, as its remembrance would otherwise never have survived the Atlantean deluge. The second statue, 120 feet high, represents with complete clarity the Hyperborean root race, the Sweat-born. The third, measuring 60 feet high, wisely immortalizes the Lemurian root race which inhabited the continent Mu, or Lemuria, which was situated in the Pacific Ocean. The last descendants are represented in the famous statues found on Easter Island. The fourth root race is represented by the next corresponding statue. This race lived in the Atlantean continent, situated in the Atlantic Ocean, and was still smaller than the previous one, though gigantic in comparison with our present fifth root race. The last of these 5 images is a little higher than the average tall person of our actual root race. It is obvious that this statue personifies the Aryan humanity which inhabits the present continents. There exist everywhere, in all the corners of the world, Cyclopean ruins and colossal stones which are a living testimony of these giants. Gigantic stones that walk, talk, utter oracles, and even sing existed in the ancient times. It is written that the Christ stone, the spiritual rock that followed Israel, became a Jupiter lapis, swallowed by his father Saturn, under the shape of a pedernal, flint. There could never have been a Stonehenge, a Karnak, Britain, and other such Cyclopean structures, if there had never been the existence of giants to move about such colossal rocks. If in foregone times the true and legitimate magic science would not have existed upon the face of the earth, then there never would have existed so many testimonies of these oracle and chattering stones. In a poem on stones attributed to Orpheus, these stones are divided into ophites and siderites, serpent stones and star stones. The ophite is shaggy, hard, heavy, black, and has the gift of speech. When one is prepared to cast it away, it produces a sound similar to the cry of a child. It was by means of this type of stone that Helenus predicted the destruction of Troy, his beloved country. Very ancient sacred documents affirm that Eusebius never parted with his Ophites, and he received oracles from them, delivered in a small voice resembling a low whistling. This was the same, of course, as the small voice heard by Elias or Elijah after the earthquake at the mouth of the cave, 1 Kings 19 verse 12. The famous stone of Westminster was called Liaphael, or the speaking stone, which raised its voice only to name the king that had to be chosen. This stone had an inscription that is now erased by the dust of the centuries, which said, "Anae fallat fadem, scoti quocum locatum. Invenient lapidem, regnas tenenter ibidem." Suedas talked about a man that could distinguish with a mere glance the inanimate stones from those which were endowed with motion. Pliny mentions stones which ran away when a hand approached them. The monstrous stones of Stonehenge were called in ancient times Tiergar, or the dance of the giants. Various very erudite authors, when writing of the ruins of Stonehenge, Karnak, and West Hoadley, give marvelous information about this particular subject. In those regions, enormous monoliths are found. Some of them weigh approximately 500,000 kilograms. The giants of ancient times were those who once could raise such boulders and could place them in perfect symmetrical order, setting them down with such marvelous equilibrium that they barely seemed to touch the ground. They are set in motion at the slightest touch of a finger and would yet resist the efforts of 20 men who should attempt to displace them. Giants were the ones who transported the stones for the construction of the pyramids of Egypt. The oscillating stone was a medium for divination used by giants, but why do they oscillate? The most enormous of them are evidently relics of the Atlanteans. The smallest of them, like the rocks of Brimham, with oscillating rocks on their summit, are copies of the most ancient lithoid. Rune BAR. When speaking in the golden language, in the very pure gold of divine language, with mystical astonishment we discover that in Syrian bar signifies sun. Baron, this word in itself is broken down into two sacred syllables, bar and on. This must be intelligently translated as the son of the earth. Christ, the solar logos, is something more profound. In the Aramaic language, Christ is Barham, the Son of Man. Certainly, the Christos or the cosmic and triumphant Christos is not Jesus, though he was incarnated within him. He was neither the Buddha, but he flourished in his fertile lips made verb. He was not Moses, but he shone in his face, there on the Mount Nebo. He was not Hermes, but he lived reincorporated within him. The Lord Christos is deprived of individuality. Whosoever knows, the word gives power to. No one has uttered it, no one will utter it, except the one who has incarnated it, the Word, Christ. The Son of Man, whether he is named Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, or any other name, must suffer many things, and be rejected of the elders, those who are passing in this world as being prudent, judicious and discreet, and chief priests, constituted by men with mundane authority, and scribes, those who pass as being wise in this world, and be slain, and be raised the third day. But I tell you of a truth, there be some standing here, which shall not taste of death, till they see the kingdom of God. If any man will come after me, let him deny himself, let him dissolve the I, and take up his cross daily, and follow me. For whosoever will save his soul, the egocentric person, shall lose it, but whosoever will lose his soul for my sake, the one who wants to die within himself, the same shall save it. For what is a man advantage, if he gain the whole world and lose himself or be cast away? For whosoever shall be ashamed of me and my words, of him shall the Son of Man be ashamed, when he shall come in his own glory, and in his Father's, and of the holy angels. Luke 9 verses 22 to 27. When we study cosmic grammar, then we can verify for ourselves that an intimate relationship exists between the runes TYR and BAR. TYR esoterically corresponds to the zodiacal sign of Pisces, and BAR burningly shines in the brilliant constellation of Aries. This reminds us of the existing occult relationship between water and fire, death and life. If we place before the sacred syllable Har the letter B, then we indicate with this the necessity of attracting the sun to the earth. Harbarman is the primeval name of Abraham. To incarnate Christ in and within oneself is what is vital, cardinal, and fundamental in order to convert oneself into the Son of Man. This is the only way in which to have the right of entering into the order of Melchizedek. It becomes opportune to remind the children of the earth, the dwellers of this world, this lunar race, that just as the water put an end to ancient history, as well, very soon now, the fire will destroy everything with life that is thereon. Woe! Woe! Woe to the dwellers of the earth, woe to this perverse race of Adam! But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat, the earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. 2 Peter 3 verse 10. It is good for the children of the earth to know that the solar race dwells within the 1001 nights, the Jinn lands. Truly, it is urgent, indispensable, and necessary to convert ourselves into kings or queens and priests or priestesses of nature in accordance with the order of Melchizedek. This is the only way to be saved. Among the multiple, disquieting faces of life, we have and must clearly affirm that next to our very side, another humanity exists which is invisible to us because of our sins and sexual abuses. With the consent of the very venerable and respectable masters, I have been granted the right to inform the lunar people that the order of Melchizedek has many confraternities. Let us remember just for a moment the transcendental Monsalvet, the exotic Shambhala, the sacred island of the north, which is situated in that polar spherical segment, the sacred order of Tibet to which I have the honor of being affiliated, etc. It is obvious that such ineffable corporations are unapproachable, thanks to the veil of Isis. It is beneficial to explain to people that the sexual Adamic veil can only be lifted up by the intimate Christ. The Son of Man is born from the fire and the water. This is the synthesis religion, the doctrine of Jano with its three radicals E-A-O. But the children of the earth abhor this doctrine, since their motto is, "Let us eat and drink, since tomorrow we will die." It is written that the Atlantean root race was devoured by the Averno, and that only the children of the sun were saved. This event will be repeated in accordance with the law of reoccurrence. The entrance of this present humanity into the submerged involution of this planetary organism on which we live becomes evident. Three types of churches exist. First, the triumphant church, which is represented by the few knights of the Grail who persisted to remain pure. Second, the failing church, represented by those who abhor the initiatic stone. Third, the militant church, represented by the others, who as Mary Magdalene, Paul of Tarsus, Kundry, and Amfortas, are still in rebellion against the seductive Luciferan fire. The triumphant church is certainly the church of the brethren who have already remounted upon the rash path of salvation, per aspera ad astra. As the Latin motto says, true children of God in the most beautiful mystical sense. Children of God and Son of Man are synonyms in Christic esotericism. They are the knights of the Holy Grail. Esoteric practice. You must intelligently combine the exercises of the Rune BAR with the exercises of the Rune TYR. Place the arms high above the head, descending them while the hands are cupped as shells, and while singing the mantras TYR, BAR. Objective of this practice. 1. To wisely mix within our own interior universe the magical forces of the two runes. 2. To awaken consciousness. 3. To intimately accumulate Christic atoms of high voltage. Chapter 20. The 10 Rules for Meditation. Scientific meditation has 10 basic fundamental rules. Without them, the emancipation and liberation from the mortifying shackles of the mind becomes impossible. First rule. To be completely conscious of the psychological mood in which we are situated before the arising of any thought. Second rule. Psychoanalysis, to investigate the root and origin of each thought, remembrance, affection, emotion, feeling, resentment, etc. while they emerge from within the mind. Third rule. To serenely observe our own mind, to put perfect attention on all mental forms which appear on the screen of the intellect. Fourth rule. To try remembering and recalling the sensation of contemplation from moment to moment during the common and current course of daily life. Fifth rule. The intellect must assume a psychological, receptive, integral, unitotal, complete, tranquil, and profound state. Sixth rule. A continuity of purpose, tenacity, firmness, constancy, and insistence must exist in the technique of meditation. Seventh rule. To assist any time we can in the meditation rooms of the Gnostic Lamigials is affable. Eighth rule. It is peremptory, urgent, and necessary to convert ourselves into watchers of our own mind, during any agitated or revolving activity, to stop at least for an instant in order to observe it. Ninth rule. It is indispensable and necessary to always practice with closed eyes, with the goal of avoiding the external sensorial perceptions. 10th rule. Absolute relaxation of all the body and the wise combination of meditation with drowsiness. Beloved reader, the moment has arrived in order to judiciously weigh and analyze these 10 scientific rules of meditation. A. The principal, base and living foundation of samadhi, ecstasy, consists of the previous introspective knowledge of oneself. To introvert ourselves is indispensable during the deepest meditation. We must start to profoundly know the psychological mood which we are in before the appearance of any mental form in the intellect. It becomes urgent to comprehend that any thought which emerges from within our understanding is always preceded by pain or pleasure, happiness or sadness, like or dislike. B. Serene reflection. Examine, estimate, and inquire about the origin, cause, reason, or fundamental motive of every thought, remembrance, image, affection, desire, etc., while they emerge from within the mind. Self-discovery and self-revelation exist in this second rule. C. Serene observation. Pay perfect attention to every mental form which makes its apparition on the screen of the intellect. D. We must convert ourselves into spies of our own mind, by contemplating it in action from instant to instant. E. The chit, mind, is transformed into vrittis, vibratory waves. The mind is like a pleasant and tranquil lake. A rock falls in this lake, then bubbles emerge from the bottom. All the different thoughts are perturbed buckles upon the surface of the waters. Let the lake of the mind remain crystalline, without waves, serene and profound during the meditation. F. The inconstant people, who are voluble, versatile, changeable, without firmness, without will never achieve the ecstasy, the satori, the samadhi. G. It is obvious that the scientific meditation can be practiced individually or in an isolated way, as well as in a group of affine people. H. The soul must be liberated from the body, affections, and the mind. It is evident, notorious, and obvious that when the soul is emancipated from the intellect, it is radically liberated from the rest. I. To eliminate the external sensorial perceptions during the interior profound. Meditation is urgent, indispensable, and necessary. J. It is indispensable to relax the body for the meditation. No muscle must remain with tension. It is urgent to provoke and to regulate drowsiness by will. It is evident, notorious, and unarguable that from the wise combination of drowsiness and meditation, that which is called illumination is the outcome. Result. Upon the mysterious threshold of the Temple of Delphi, a Greek maxim existed, which was engraved in the stone and said, Nos te ipsum, man knows thyself, and thou will know the universe and the gods. In the final instance, it is obvious, evident, and clear that the study of oneself and serene reflection conclude in the quietude and in the silence of the mind. When the mind is quiet and in silence, not only in the intellectual level, but in all and each one of the 49 subconscious departments, then the newness emerges. The essence, the consciousness, is unbottled, and the awakening of the soul, that is to say, the ecstasy, the samadhi, the satori of the saints occurs. The mystical experience of the reality transforms us radically. People who have never directly experimented with what is the truth live like butterflies from school to school. They have yet to find their center of cosmic gravitation. Therefore, they die as failures, and without having achieved the so longed for intimate self-realization. The awakening of the consciousness, of the essence, of the soul or Buddhata is only possible by liberating, emancipating ourselves from the mental dualism, from the struggle of the antithesis of the intellectual waves. Any subconscious, infraconscious, and unconscious submerged struggle is converted into a bondage for the liberation of the essence soul. Every antithetical battle, as insignificant and unconscious as it might appear, indicates, accuses, aims to obscure points which are ignored, unknown within the atomic infernos of the human being. To reflect, observe, and know these infrahuman aspects, these obscure points of oneself, is indispensable in order to achieve the absolute quietude and silence of the mind. To experience that which is not of time is only possible while in absence of the I. Chapter 21. The Tragedy of the Queen Dido. No one can deny that the eternal mother space has two rival aspects. Venus and Astaroth, Hiva and Lilith, Sophia Achamoth and Sophia Pernikos. Let us now talk about Venus, or it is better if we say, let us talk of Astaroth, which is its negative aspect, and Prakrity's tenebrous antithesis in nature and in the human being. Long ago, over many centuries, we find how the heart of the Queen Dido became inflamed by the cruelty of Kali. The unhappy sovereign did not want to comprehend that her passion was contrary to the will of the holy gods. O Dido! Light of a delectable dream, flower from an enchanted myth, your admirable beauty sings the grace of Hermaphroditus with the aerial enchantment of Atlanta, and from your ambiguous form the evocative ancient muse raises a hymn to the fire. Thus, from the old wine poured down within the amphora, Aeneas thirstily drank. Therefore, Phoebus frowned his forehead, and Juno frowned her own as well, but nodding in assent, Kali Astaroth laughed as always when Eros untied his philter within the chalices of Hebe. So, before meeting the illustrious Trojan man Aeneas, the saddened queen spurned the love of Jarba, the king of Libya, a courageous man who did not tolerate any offense, a terrific archer who dwelled with his people of war close to the African desert. Poor Dido! What a terrible intimate struggle she would have to endure between her sacred duty, the love of her people, and the cruel wound of Cupid, who began his destructive labor by incessantly erasing from the memory of the sovereign the image of Sychaeus, her former husband. Lilith Astaroth, what damage have you caused? Goddess of desire and passions, mother of Cupid, the human tempests shed blood from their hearts because of you. Thus, this is how, O Queen, you put your tremendous oath aside and into oblivion, by finding on the path of your life a Trojan who placed on your thirsty lips a new breath, a beautiful cup of delicious wine. Then, when Cupid arrived, a wild triple flame was lit in your scarlet blood, and among grapevines of fire you delivered the vintage of your life to a dreadful sexual passion. This beauty, whose terrible fate commanded with much tenderness that she be martyrized, received from Lucifer a rare black pearl for her tiara of madness. Thus, the unhappy queen consulted her dearest sister Anna, and both of them traversed the altars of their diverse gods in search of presages that would favor her desires. They immolated victims to Ceres, to Phoebus Apollo, and to Dionysus, and especially to Juno, who is the goddess of women who work in the ninth sphere. Juno also presides over just and perfect nuptial ceremonies. Many times, O God, the tragic queen bent herself over the open wounds of the innocent sacrificed victims, inspecting inside their palpitating inner organs. Yet, an enamored woman who has her consciousness asleep clearly will always be ready to interpret all the signs in favor of her dream. From heaven, Juno, the goddess of initiated women, was observing with indignation the tenebrous progresses that Kali Astaroth was making upon the poor Dido, but all of Juno's claims and protests were in vain. Consumed by passion, the unhappy sovereign was walking in vigil every night, exclusively thinking of Aeneas. Madly in love, the Trojan Aeneas rebuilt the walls of Carthage and worked in the fortification of this foreign city. Ah! How distinct the fate of poor Dido would have been if Mercury, the messenger of the gods, did not intervene. The epic Trojan paladin had to march towards Licinium, and to forget she who adored him. Such was the command of Jupiter, father of gods and men. You are not the son of a goddess, and Dardanus was not the first founder of your family. It was the Caucasus that fathered you on its hard rocks, and Hyrcanian tigers offered you their udders. This is what the desperate, enraged sovereign exclaimed. Useless were all of her complaints and her mourning. If this unhappy bride was not an Aulus, sacrificing to the gods in order to invoke the destruction of the city of Priam, and if she was never in alliance with the Achaeans, then why, O God of mine, should this unhappy woman have suffered so much? This unfortunate sovereign, transformed into a slave by the cruel dart of sexual passion, was invoking death. Useless were her offerings before the altar of the goddess Juno, since animal passion receives no answer from the gods. Ah! If people could know that the poison of animal passion cheats the mind and heart. The disgraced queen believed herself to be in love. The dart of Cupid was inserted in her heart, but certainly in its depth, passion was that which she felt. So, the unhappy one cried upon the altar of Juno, and suddenly, the lustral water became black like a sackcloth of hair, and the sacred wine of libation became red as blood. Terrible were the moments. Upon the solitary dome of the palace, the owl of death sung his sinister song, and at times the sovereign dreamt of herself walking in a desert without limits in search of her adored Aeneas, or desperately escaping while being chased by the merciless furies. Nevertheless, the unhappy one did not ignore the magical, marvelous, and infallible procedures in order to forget her bestial passion. "Go now telling no one," said she unto her sister Anna, "and build up a pyre under the open sky in the inner courtyard of the palace, and lay on it the armor this traitor has left hanging on the walls of my room, everything there is of his remaining, including that sword which was engraved with gold and that he offered as a present for our nuptial wedding which was never fulfilled, and the marriage bed on which I was destroyed. I want to wipe out everything that can remind me of such a man, and that is what the priestess advised." Disgracefully, the passionate sovereign, instead of burning in that funeral pyre the remains of this illustrious Trojan man, resolved to immolate herself into that fire in a sudden blaze of madness. She tied her royal temples with the band of the victims who are destined for sacrifice, and at the foot of the funeral pyre, she took as her witnesses the 100 gods, as well as Erebus, Chaos, and Hecate, the third aspect of the Divine Mother space. She, the unfortunate sovereign who could have utilized the magical effects of the lunar herbs by using them as a fuel for the incineration of memories, passion, and evil thoughts, instead, desired with violence to burn herself in the pyre of death. She begged to the sun, exclaimed to Juno, invoked the furies of vengeance, and committed the error of damning Aeneas, and finally, pierced her heart with the Trojan sword. Her sister found her already burning within the blazing fire of madness. Thus is how the Queen Dido died. Chapter 22. Rune BAR. Surveying from a height within the infinite space, searching and lurking within the Akashic records of nature, I could verify for myself that the moon is the mother of the earth. Now, with the open eye of Dangma, I will submerge myself within the great Maya, the famous super-soul of Emerson, the soul of the universe. I invite you, beloved reader, to study in depth this chapter. It is necessary to meditate on it, to go deeply into its content, to know its profound significance. If you ask me who I am, I will answer you. I am one of the 7 Amshaspentas of the Zoroastrians, who was active in the past Mahamanvantara that was named the Lotus of Gold. Therefore, I am going to give testimony of that which I have seen and heard. Listen to me, men and gods. I know in depth the 7 mysteries of the moon, the 7 jewels, the 7 surges of life which evolved and devolved within that which the Theosophists call the lunar chain. Certainly, the moon is the satellite of the Earth only in one sense. What I am referring to is that it rotates around our planet. When this matter is seen from another angle, when it is investigated with the eye of Shiva, intense spiritual vision of the adept or Jivan Mukta, then, truly, the Earth becomes the satellite of the moon. The evidence in favor of this fact are found in the tides, in the changing cycles of the many forms of sicknesses which coincide with the lunar phases, in what we can observe within the development of plants, and in the very marked influence within the phenomena of conception and gestation of all creatures. The moon was an inhabited planet, but now it is just cold refuse, a shadow that is dragged by the new body, the Earth, which is where all of its powers and principles of life have been passed by transfusion. It is condemned to be in pursuit of the Earth throughout many ages. The moon looks like a satellite, but it is a mother which rotates around its daughter, the Earth. I lived among the lunar humanity. I knew its 7 root races, its epochs of civilization and barbarism, its alternating cycles of evolution and involution. When the Selenites arrived to the 6th subrace of the 4th round, the same age to which this terrestrial humanity has already reached, I accomplished a similar mission to the one which I am accomplishing in these moments on the planet in which we live. I taught to the people of the moon the synthesis religion, which is contained within the initiatic stone, the sex, the doctrine of Jano, EAO, or the doctrine of the jinns. I lit the flame of gnosis among the Selenites. I formed a Gnostic movement there. Thus, I sowed the seed, and as I sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the mundane fowls of the air devoured them. Some seeds fell upon rocks of discussions, theories and anxieties, where there did not exist profound and reflective people. As soon as they sprung up, they withered away before the light of the sun, for they did not pass the ordeal of fire, as they did not have roots. Some fell among the thorns of brothers and sisters who hurt each other with their thorns of slander and gossip, etc. So, the thorns sprang up with the seeds, and choked them. Fortunately, my labor as a sower was not in vain, since some seeds fell on good ground, and sprang up, and bore fruit, some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. Many latent faculties exist within the Devamatri, Aditi or cosmic space, inside the runic or, within the microcosms, machine man or better if we say intellectual animal, that could be developed through tremendous intimate super efforts. On the ancient moon, in those times before it became a corpse, those who accepted the synthesis religion of Jano became saved and they transformed themselves into angels. Nevertheless, the great majority, those who were enemies of the Methuna, those who rejected the initiatic stone, the sex, converted themselves into Lucifers, terribly perverse demons which the Bible refers to. As usual, a third party is never missing, so, in that lunar apocalypse, a certain cold group at last became fiery, and they accepted the work in the 9th sphere, the sex. A new abode was granted to these people, in order for them to work with the brute stone until giving it perfect cubic form. The stone which the builders disallowed, the same is made the head of the corner, and stone of stumbling, and a rock of offense. 1 Peter 2 verses 7-8. In those times the Selenites had a dreadful sanguinary religion. The pontiff of such a cult sentenced me with the death penalty, and I was crucified upon the summit of a mountain close to a great city. The transference of all the vital powers of the moon to this planet Earth left the old Selenite abode without life. Therefore, the lunar soul is now reincarnated in this world upon which we live. I was absorbed within the Absolute at the end of that lunar Mahamanvantara which endured 311,040,000,000,000 years, or, in other words, an age of Brahma. It is indispensable to say that after the great day, the monadic waves of the moon submerged themselves within the runic UR, within the profound womb of the eternal mother space. It is urgent to affirm that during such Mahasamadhi, ecstasy without end, we, the monadic waves, penetrated much more deeply, and thus, we arrived to the Father, Brahma, the universal spirit of life. It is necessary to clarify that Brahma submerged himself into the Absolute during the whole period of the Mahapralaya, the Great Night. While we, the brethren, were in that tremendous paranirvanic repose, the unknown darkness converted itself into uncreated light for us. UHR is the clock, the time measurement, thus, the Mahamanvantara RHU is the repose, the Great Pralaya. Certainly, the cosmic night endures as much as the great day. It is my duty to affirm that each one of us, the brethren, was radically absorbed within his own primordial atom, the Ahisoph. Therefore, when the dawn of the new cosmic day is initiated, the eternal mother space widens herself from inside towards the outer like a lotus bud. Thus, this is how the universe is gestated inside the womb of Prakriti. Practice. Loving our Divine Mother and thinking in that great womb where the worlds are gestated, let us pray daily as follows. Within my internal real being resides the divine light, Ramio. Is the mother of my being, Devi Kundalini, Ramio, help me. Ramio, assist me, illuminate me. Ramio, divine mother of mine, Isis of mine, thou hast the child Horus, my true being, in thy arms. I need to die within myself so that my essence might be lost in him. Indication. This prayer must be performed before the sun, with raised arms and hands. The legs must be opened, and the body slightly crouched, thus awaiting to receive light and more light. Chapter 23. The Story of the Master Meng Shan. Old traditions which are lost in the night of the centuries say that the Chinese master Meng Shan knew the science of meditation before the age of 20. It is stated by the yellow-skinned mystics that from such an age until 32, the sighted master was studying with the 18 elders. Certainly, it is interesting, pleasant and worthwhile to know that this great illuminated one was studying with infinite humbleness at the feet of the venerable elder Wan Shan, who taught him how to intelligently utilize the powerful mantra Wu. This mantra is pronounced like a W, and wisely imitates the howl or sound of the hurricane when blowing within the rifts of the mountains. This brother could never forget the state of alert perception and alert novelty, which are so indispensable and so urgent for the awakening of the consciousness. The venerable elder guru Wan Shan told him that during the 12 hours of the day, it is necessary to be alert like a cat which is lurking for a mouse, or like a hen which is brooding on her eggs. They do this without abandoning their duty, not even for a second. Therefore, in these studies mere efforts are not worthy, only super efforts are so. Since we are not illuminated, we must work without rest, like a mouse which is gnawing on a sarcophagus. If we practice in this manner, we will finally be liberated from the mind, and we will experience in a direct way that element which radically transforms, that element which is the truth. One given day, after 18 days and nights of profound interior meditation, Meng Shan sat down in order to drink tea, and then, oh marvel! He comprehended the intimate sense of a certain gesture of the Buddha showing a flower, and the deep significance of Mahakassapa with his unforgettable exotic smile. He then questioned 3 or 4 elders about such a mystic experience, but they kept silent. Other elders told him to identify such a living esoteric experience with the Samadhi, the seal of the ocean. Naturally, this wise advice inspired complete confidence in himself. Meng Shan was triumphantly advancing in his studies, nonetheless. In life not everything comes up roses, there are also thorns. So, in the month of July, during the 5th year of Qindan, 1264, he unfortunately got dysentery in Chungking, a province of Sichuan. With death on his lips, he decided to make his will and to dispose of his terrene goods. When this was done, he slowly rose to a sitting position, burned incense, and sat on an elevated place. There, in silence, he prayed to the 3 blessed ones and to the holy gods by repenting himself from all of the evil deeds he committed in his life. However, since he considered the end of his existence definite, he asked the ineffable ones to hear his last petition. By means of the power of prajna and a controlled mental state, I want to reincarnate myself in a favorable place, where I can become a monk, Swami, at an early age. If perchance I recuperate myself from this illness, I will renounce the world, will take the vows, and I will try to carry the light to other young Buddhists. After pronouncing these vows, he submerged himself into a profound meditation while mentally chanting the mantra Wu. The sickness was tormenting him, his intestines were frighteningly torturing him, but he resolved not to pay attention to them. Meng Shan radically forgot his own body. His eyelids were firmly closed, and he remained as if dead. Chinese traditions tell us that when Meng Shan entered into meditation, only the verb, that is to say, the mantra Wu, was resounding in his mind. Afterwards, he lost the notion of himself. But the sickness. What became of it? What happened? It is clear and lucid to comprehend that any affliction, illness, or pain has determined mental forms as a foundation. If we achieve the radical and absolute forgetfulness of any suffering, then the intellectual base is dissolved, and the organic indisposition disappears as well. When Meng Shan rose from his place at the beginning of the night, with infinite happiness he felt that he was already half cured. Then after, he sat anew, and continued being submerged into profound meditation until midnight. Thus, his cure became complete. Meng Shan went to Changning in the month of August, and filled with faith he entered the priesthood. He remained 1 year in that monastery. Afterwards he initiated a voyage in which he was cooking his own food and washing his own clothes, etc. He then comprehended that the duty of meditation must be tenacious, resistant, strong, firm, constant, without ever getting tired of it. Later on, walking throughout those Chinese lands, he arrived at the monastery of the Yellow Dragon. While there, he deeply comprehended the necessity of the awakening of the consciousness. Afterwards, he continued his voyage towards Changcheng. Immediately after his arrival, he tossed himself at the feet of the master Ku Chan from Chin Tin and swore not to leave the monastery until reaching the illumination. The time he lost during his voyage in the work of meditation was recuperated after 1 month of intense meditation. But in the interval, his body became filled with horrible blisters. He intentionally ignored them and continued with his esoteric discipline. One given day, it does not matter which one, some people invited him to a delicious supper. While walking on the way there, he took his hua tu and worked with it. Thus, he submerged himself into profound meditation and passed the door of his host without noticing it. So, he comprehended that he could keep ahead with his esoteric work while being in complete physical activity. On the 6th of March, while Meng Shan was meditating with the help of the mantra Wu, a monk who was the principal of the monastery, entered the Lumigial of meditation with the evident purpose of burning incense. However, it so happened that when this monk struck the box of the smoke offering, a noise was produced, and Meng Shan came to recognize himself, and he could see and hear Cao Chou, a notorious Chinese master. Desperate, I arrived at the dead end of the path. Then I stroked the wave, but this was nothing else than water. Oh, that notorious old man Cao Chou, whose face is so ugly. All the Chinese biographers agree when they affirm that in autumn, Meng Shan had an interview with Su Yan in Lingen and with Tue Kang, Shurs Kang, Su Chou, and other notorious elders. I understand that the koan or enigmatic phrase which was decisive for Meng Shan was without any doubt the same one with which Wan Shan interrogated him. Is not that phrase, "The light shines serenely upon the sand of the brook," a prosaic observation from this foolish Cheng? The meditation upon this phrase was enough for Meng Shan. When later Wan Shan interrogated him with the same phrase, that is to say, when he repeated to him the same question, the yellow-skinned mystic answered by throwing away the mattress of his bed, as if he was saying, "I am already awakened." Chapter 24. The Country of the Dead. Aeneas, the most excellent Trojan man, olympically and solemnly ascended the august mountain of Apollo, on whose majestic summit the mysterious cavern of the Pythoness was found. Close to the temple, there was the sacred forest of the third aspect of the divine mother Kundalini, an ineffable jungle of Hecate, Proserpine, Coatlicue. It was a hermetically sealed sanctuary with 100 doors, a glorious entrance on which Daedalus, the skillful sculptor, engraved marvelous embossments with his extraordinary mastery. It is said that Icaros with his EIO, chiseled by his father on the sacred rock of that mysterious entrance, wanted to soar towards heaven, to convert himself into a son of the sun, but the wax that held his wings to his body melted and he fell into the horrifying precipice. Icaros is the marvelous symbol of the vain intention of those who do not know how to work with the luminous and spermatic fiat of the first instant. It is the disgrace and downfall of those alchemists who spill the raw matter of the great work. Was Daedalus not perhaps the famous sculptor, the creator of Icaros, and also the same one who taught Theseus how to escape from the intricate labyrinth of Crete? It was a horrifying corridor, and in the center of this labyrinth was always found the famous Minotaur, a half-man half-beast, complicated intellect which is bottled up within the myself. We can make ourselves truly free only by eliminating the interior beast. We will reach the intimate self-realization only by the dissolution of the animal ego. This is no time for you to be looking at sights like these, said the priestess, since soon Apollo, similar to a hurricane wind, will arrive. So, this illustrious Trojan man sacrificed 100 black rams from a herd in honor to Proserpine, who is the third manifested aspect of the eternal mother space, queen of hell and death. Thus, when the Sibyl spoke, "O God, A frightening earthquake shook the bottom of the earth and, while transfigured, the virgin priestess cried, "It is the god Apollo. The god Apollo is here. Why are you hesitating, Trojan Aeneas? Why are you so slow to offer your vows and prayers? Until you have prayed, the great mouths of my house are dumb and will not open." The legend of the centuries states that when this notorious man heard these venerated words, he poured out ardent prayers from the depths of his heart to Apollo. Then, the priestess, with her voice transfigured by ecstasy, spoke and warned this most illustrious warrior to lay hold his foot upon the shores of Italy, and to establish himself in the kingdom of Lavinium. She told him that a second Achilles, equal in strength to the first one, would declare war upon him, and that the Latin rivers would be foaming with torrents of blood as the Simois and the Xanthus were in Troy. However, he must not give way to these adversities. Instead, he must face them all, since his road to safety, strange as it may seem, would start from a Greek city. With these words from her sanctuary, the Sibyl of Cumae sang in the mountain her fearful riddling prophecies. Her voice boomed in the temple, and the earth howled as she wrapped the truth in darkness. Demonius est Deus in versus. So, the hero Aeneas began to beseech the Sibyl. He wept, and asked to be allowed to go into the country of the dead. He wanted to descend into the abode of Pluto and said, "Since they say the gate of the king of the underworld is here, and here too is the black swamp which the tide of Acheron floods, I pray to be allowed to go and look upon the face of my dear father. Show me the way and open the sacred door for me." On these shoulders I carried him away through the flames of the smoking Troy. Besides, it was my father himself who begged and commanded me to come to you as a supplicant and approach your doors. Was not Orpheus allowed to summon the shade of his wife with the sound of the strings of his Thracian lyre? Do I need to speak of Theseus? Or of great Hercules? I too am descended from highest Jupiter. Aeneas was an initiate. Certainly, to descend into the Averno in order to work in the ninth sphere and to dissolve the ego is easy, but it is dreadfully difficult to retrace our steps and to escape to the upper air. That is the task. That is the difficult labor. Proserpine, the queen of hell and death, is certainly very capricious, and she always ordains that an offering must be brought to her from those who visit her. This offering is the golden bough, the golden branch of the tree of knowledge, with plenty seed. Joyful is the one who finds this magic tree, which, by the way, is not too far from us, since it is the very spinal medulla. The doors of Pluto will be open to this one. Whosoever wants to ascend must previously descend, this is the law. The initiation is death and birth at the same time. However, you who read these lines, let the dead bury their dead, but you go and follow me. Whosoever wants to come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross, and follow me. To deny the self signifies to dissolve the I, to die from moment to moment, to reduce the myself to dust from instant to instant. To take up the heavy cross of the Master upon our shoulders is something very significant. The vertical pole of this sacred symbol is masculine, and the horizontal pole is feminine. The clue of the second birth is found in the sexual crossing of these two poles. To follow the Lord from second to second signifies sacrifice for humanity, to be ready to give even our last drop of blood for our fellow men, to immolate ourselves upon the sacred altar of supreme love for the sake of all of our brethren of the world. Now, gods and mortals, listen to me. The Sibyl and Aeneas penetrated into the womb of the earth through the dreadful cave. I place the genie of the earth as witness, in order to solemnly affirm that before entering into the Averno one has to pass through the Orcus, limbo. The Orcus is in itself a vestibule where many abide, such as white-faced diseases, horrifying, perverse hunger who is a corrupter of men, squalid poverty, perverted pleasures, murderous war, the Furies, raving discord with blood-soaked ribbons binding her viperous hair, pain and the idle dreams of the consciousness. Here is where Aeneas found the stubborn dreams of people. Here is where he saw all manner of monstrous beasts like Briareus, the giant with his 100 arms, the Hydra of Lerna, who Hercules killed with mastery when cutting off all of its multiple heads, the Chimera of people, which is a monster with the face of a goat, the Gorgons and Harpies, witches, etc. The Orcus is the very throat of hell where the mysterious root, which conduces the lost souls to the Tartarus, infernal worlds, commences. Aeneas and the Sibyl, while seated on the boat of Charon, navigated on the waters of Acheron and arrived to the other shore. Aeneas also found Cerberus the demon of gluttony, and Minos the inexorable judge, and he saw the gloomy river, which 9 times serpentines the ninth sphere, and the terrible water pools of Styx. Within the Averno, the pitiful Aeneas found Dido the queen who loved him, and he was able to embrace his deceased father. Chapter 25. Runes Dorn and Torn. Just few days ago, it occurred to me to visit the temple of Chapultepec in Mexico again. A certain sister was humbly bowing herself before the door of the temple, thus imploring her admission. These types of sincere supplications are always heard. Master Lytolantes and I entered behind such a supplicant. Frankly, I cannot deny that I advanced filled with profound veneration and devotion, walking upon my own knees, as many penitents do. Thus, in this way, I ascended each one of the steps of the sanctuary. Lytolantes entered very happy, and a little bit playful. I had to become a little severe with her, and because of my attitude she became surprised. Once inside the temple, I am different, I said, addressing her. A group of lunar people took advantage of this opportunity of open doors, poor people. Lytolantes and my insignificant person who has no value, felt ourselves so distinct to all of those people who were dressed with lunar rags. Truly, how different are the solar bodies! What is astonishing is the way in which this lunar group advanced. Without veneration, without respect. However, I could clearly and with complete lucidity comprehend that I should see such a group with sympathy, since they were selected people and with a lot of merits. Unfortunately, it was not an hour for a meeting, and the way in which these people entered was not organized either. The superior master of the temple was severely grumbling at them, and he even took them out of the temple by singing in a very delectable language. Thus, all of these people had to withdraw. I have remained reflecting upon all of this. The love of Christ is formidable because this lunar group is very sincere, even though these poor little ones have yet to achieve the second birth. But they deserve to be helped. So the Lord takes care and cultivates them, as if they were delicate little flowers from the greenhouse. Good opportunities will be finally granted unto them in order to work in the ninth sphere. Then, oh yes, disgrace be on them if they would fail in the difficult ordeal. Since ancient times, the descent into the ninth sphere was the maximum ordeal for the supreme dignity of the Hierophant. Buddha, Jesus, Dante, Hermes, Krishna, Quetzalcoatl, etc. had to descend into the abode of Pluto. Here is the cave where Cerberus, who is a prodigy of terror, howls. With its barking, its 3 enormous flat-nosed heads and with serpents writhing on its neck, Cerberus fills all the defuncts with terror. Those who died cheated by the poison of sexual passion dwell in those painful profundities, as did Evadne, Pasiphae, and Laodamia, and also the poor Queen Dido who swore to be faithful to the ashes of Sychaeus. Here is where many heroes of ancient Troy live, as did Glaucus, Medon, Thersilochus, Polybotes, and also Idaeus, who was so beloved yet feared. Here is where the terrible shadows of Agamemnon and Ajax and many other Achaeans, who fought against Troy, are running and screaming, while reviving their life as if still fighting on the fields of battle sprinted with some might. They still are inebriated with light and blood. Here is where the sinister city exists, encircled by a triple wall, and from where horrible groans and dragging and clanking of iron chains are heard. Here are the 3 furies, desire, mind and evil will who flog the guilty ones with whips which hiss as viperous tongues over them. The Titans of ancient Atlantis, who intended to climb the firmament to conquer other worlds of the infinite space, without having reached the true sanctity, also live there in those tenebrous submerged regions. In the Tartarus live the fornicators, adulterers, homosexuals, assassins, drunkards, the avaricious, the selfish, thieves, swindlers, the angry, the violent, the greedy, the envious, the proud, the vain, the lazy, gluttons, the founders of evil doctrines, hypocritical Pharisees, traitors and materialistic atheists who are enemies of the Eternal One. Immense, O God, is the multitude of crimes which even if having 100 mouths, 1,000 tongues and a voice of steel, their enumeration can never be uttered. To descend into those mineral regions of the earth, into that subworld, becomes extremely easy, but to ascend again, to return up to the light of the sun is frightfully difficult, almost impossible. When I was born in the causal world, or better if we say the parallel universe of the conscious will, then, the sacred cloth of Veronica shone upon the altar of the temple. Many heads crowned with thorns that are chiseled in stone are found to be related to the age of bronze. A cult to the god of thorns existed. Such thorns, when treated with consideration and judiciously examined, present to us with clarity the symbolic figure of the rune torn. In these sacred mysteries of the thorn cult, special practices were given in order to develop the conscious will. Dorn, torn, signifies willpower. Remember, Gnostic brethren, that our motto is thelema. The divine rostrum crowned with thorns signifies thelema, that is to say, conscious will. Dorn is also the phallus, the volitive principle of sexual magic, mithuna. There is the need, by means of the phallus, to intelligently accumulate the seminal energy, and when it is refrained and transmuted, it is converted into thelema, willpower. Arm yourself with a willpower like steel. Remember, beloved reader, that without the thorn which pierces or sticks, the spark does not jump, the light does not emerge. We can return from the Tartarus and up to the light of the sun. Only with thelema, Christ will. Truly, I tell unto you that Christ will knows how to obey the Father on earth as it is in heaven. Take heed of the evil will, it is in itself the strength of Satan, that is to say, concentrated desire. Practice. In the military position, on our feet, firm and facing towards the east, place your right arm in such a way that your hand will remain resting upon your waist or hips, thus performing the form of this rune. Now, you must sing the mantric syllables ta, ti, ti, to, tu, with the purpose of developing in yourself Christ will. This exercise must be practiced every day at sunrise. Chapter 26. The I. You, who with mystical patience have auscultated the arcanum of the mysterious night, you, who have comprehended the enigma, which is hidden in each heart, as well as the resound of a faraway carriage, of a vague echo, of a slight sound which is lost in the far-off distance, listen to me. In those instants of profound silence, when forgotten things emerge from the bottom of the memory, in those foregone times, in the hour of the dead, in the hour of repose, you will know how to study in depth this present chapter of the fifth gospel, not only with your mind, but also with your heart. As if in a cup of gold, I pour my sufferings in these lines, sufferings of past remembrances and fatal disgraces, sorrowful nostalgia of my soul inebriated with flowers, mourning of my heart, sad from festivities. But what is that which I want to say? Soul of mine, are you perhaps lamenting with vain complaints because of too many yesterdays? You can still hunt for the perfumed rose and the fleur-de-lis, and at least there are also myrtles for your pitiful gray head. The soul satiated with vain remembrances, cruelly is immolating what the ego enjoys, such as Zingwa, the black and lubricous queen of Angola. You have enjoyed yourself with horrifying bacchanals, stubborn pleasures within the mundane noise, and now, woe of thee! You heard the terrible imprecation of ecclesiasticum. Disgrace on thee! Poor ego! The moment of passion bewitched you. But behold, how Ash Wednesday is arriving memento homo. Thus, this is why towards the mountain of initiation the selected souls are going, and they are defined as Anacreont and Omar Khayyam. The old time gnaws everything with no clemency, and it goes quickly. You must know how to defeat it, Cynthia, Chloe, and Sidalisa. While in the absence of the I and beyond time, I experienced that. Which is the reality, the element which radically transforms. To vividly experience the reality beyond the mind, to experience in a direct way that which is not from time, certainly, is something impossible to describe with words. So, I was in that state which is known in the Oriental world as Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Being an individual, I had passed beyond any individuality. I felt for an instant that the drop was getting lost within the ocean that has no shores, the sea of indescribable light. The bottomless abyss. The Buddhist void filled with glory and happiness. How can the illuminated void be defined? How can that which is beyond time be described? Thus, the samadhi became extremely profound. The absolute absence of the I, the complete loss of individuality, the more and more radical impersonalization caused fear in me. Yes, fear. I was afraid of losing what I was, my own particularity, my human affections. What a terrible thing is the Buddhist annihilation. So, filled with fright and even terror, I lost the ecstasy, I entered time. I bottled myself up within the I fell into the mind. Then, woe of me. Woe. Woe. It was then when I comprehended the inconvenient joke of the ego. The ego was the one who was suffering. It was afraid of its life, it was crying. Satan, the myself, my beloved ego, caused me the loss of my samadhi. What a horror if I could have known it before. But people adore their I too much, they quality it as divine and sublime. Certainly, how mistaken they are. Poor humanity. When I passed through this mystical living experience, I was still very young, and she, the night, the firmament, was named Urania. Ah. Crazy youth plays with such mundane things and sees in each woman a Greek nymph, even when she could be a scarlet courtesan girl. Such a time is now already distant. But still I see orange blossoms in the green orange trees, which are impregnated with aromas, and in the old frigates which come from the distant seas, or in the haycock. Or thick mangroves, your adored rostrum from that time begins to appear like the first sorrow and first love. So, I comprehended that I needed to dissolve the ego, to reduce it into dust, in order to have the right to ecstasy. Then, God of mine, I found myself with many and too many yesterdays. Truly, the I is a book of many volumes. How difficult was the dissolution of the I for me, but I achieved it. Sometimes when fleeing from evil, I was encountering the evil, and I cried. For what use is the vile envy and lust, if their pale furies writhe as reptiles? For what use is the fatal hatred of those who are ungrateful? For what use are the libidinous gestures of the Pallades? Within the depth of the most chaste men, the biblical Adam lives inebriated with carnal passion, and delectably tastes the forbidden fruit, as does the naked Phryne in the work of Phidias. So, I cry out a lot to heaven, saying, Give unto this fawn, which is in me, science, the wisdom which makes the angel shake his wings. Through praying and penance allow me to put in fugue the evil she-devils. Give me, O Lord, other eyes, and not these ones that enjoy looking at the roundness of snow and red lips. Give me another mouth in which the ardent embers of asceticism can remain impregnated forever, and not this mouth of Adam, in which wine and insane kisses are infinitely increasing and multiplying this bestial gluttony. Give me hands of discipline and penitence which can leave my back stained with blood, and not these lubricous hands of a lover which caress the sinning apples. Give me innocent Christic blood, and not this blood which makes my veins to boil, my nerves to vibrate, and my bones to crackle. I want to be free from evil and deceit. I want to die within myself and to feel a lovely hand which pushes me into that cave which always welcomes the hermit. So, by intensely working, O my brethren, I arrived unto the kingdom of death, through the path of love. Ah! If those who look for the illumination would truly comprehend that the soul is bottled up into the I. Ah! If they would destroy the I, if they would reduce to dust their beloved ego, then truly, their soul would remain free. Died in ecstasy, in a continuous samadhi. Thus, they will directly experience that which is the truth. Whosoever wants to vividly experience the reality must eliminate the subjective elements of perception. It is urgent to know that such elements constitute diverse entities which form the I. The soul profoundly sleeps within each one of those elements. What pain! Chapter 27. The Cruel Enchantress Circe. Ancient traditions of Latium narrate. You too, Caïda, nurse of Aeneas, have given by your death eternal flame to our shores. The honor paid you there even now protects your resting place, and your name marks the place where your bones lie, great Hesperia. If that glory is of any value. Good Aeneas duly performed the funeral rites and heaped up a barrow for the tomb, and when there was calm on the seas, he set sail and left the port behind him. A fair breeze kept blowing as night came on, the white moon lit their course and the sea shone in its shimmering rays. Keeping close inshore, they skirted the island of Calixto where Circe, the daughter of the sun, lives among her riches. With her irresistible herbs, the savage goddess had given to men the faces and hides of wild beasts. The legend of the centuries states that Neptune, lord of the sea, powerful god protector of devout Trojans, kept them from sailing into that harbor or coming near the deadly shore where the frightful enchantress dwelled, by filling their sails with favoring winds. Let us remember the case of Ulysses, cunning warrior, destroyer of citadels, the one who penetrated into the abode of Circe. The old scriptures state that the warrior halted at the mysterious portals where the fair-tressed goddess lived. There he stood and called aloud. And the goddess heard his voice, and she came forth and invited him to enter. In the Odyssey, Ulysses himself tells of his adventure. I went with her heavy at heart. So, she led me in and set me on a chair with studs of silver, a goodly carven chair, and beneath was a footstool for the feet. And she made me a potion in a golden cup, that I might drink, and she also put a charm therein, in the evil counsel of her heart. Now when she had given it and I had drunk it off, and was not bewitched, she smote me with her wand and spoke and hailed me, Go thy way now to the sty, couch thee there with the rest of thy company. So spoke she, but I drew my sharp sword from my thigh and sprang upon Circe, as one eager to slay her. But with a great cry she slipped under, and clasped my knees, and bewailing herself if spoke to me winged words, Who art thou of the sons of men, and whence? Where is thy city? Where are they that begot thee? I marvel to see how thou hast drunk of this charm, and was no wise subdued. Circe transformed men into swine, but is this perchance possible? What does lycanthropy say about this? What do the holy gods say of this? We have already spoken a great deal about the three states of the eternal mother space. Do opposite aspects of devamatri exist? What does occult science say about this? Any given body which penetrates into the fourth dimension can change its shape, however, something else is needed. What could this be? Let us go into the roots, into the very facts. It is urgent to comprehend in depth that the third aspect of the cosmic mother, whether named Hecate or Proserpine, has always the possibility of unfolding herself into two more aspects of an opposite or fatal type. Let us define and clarify. These two negative aspects of property constitute that which is named Kali or Holy Mary. The sixth arcanum of the tarot has the representation of these two polarities of the great mother space. Let us remember virtue and vice. The Virgin and the whore, Hiva the white moon and Lilith the black moon. Let us remember the two gracious wives of Shiva, the third Logos, Parvati and Duma. Their antithesis are those two sanguinary and ferocious women, Durga and Kali, the latter being the tenebrous regent of this horrible age of Kali Yuga. Kali is the tempting serpent of Eden. She is the abominable Kundartagwaiter organ, of which we have written a great deal about in our former Christmas messages. With the sinister power of such a fatal organ is how men are transformed into swine. That the abominable harpies convert themselves into frightful fowls, or that Apuleius transforms himself into a donkey and the comrades of Ulysses into swine is certainly not an impossible task. These are very natural phenomena of the fourth dimension. Fourth vertical or fourth coordinate, and these phenomena are always performed with the tenebrous power of Kali or Circe. Our affirmations might appear very strange to the readers who have never studied our former Christmas messages. However, in synthesis, we have to tell them that truly this Circe or Kali is the blind phohatic force, the transcendental sexual electricity used in a malignant way. If a harpy introduces herself with her physical organism into the fourth vertical, and if afterwards she transforms herself into a bird of evil omen, or into any given beast, you can be completely sure that she has based the whole of her work on the sinister power of the abominable Kundartagwaiter organ. Have you ever heard about the tail of Satan? It is actually the sexual fire when projected from the coccyx downwards, towards the atomic infernos of the human being. Such a luciferin tail is found controlled by a malignant atom from the secret enemy. Occult anatomy teaches that such an atomic demon is found located in the magnetic center of the coccyx. It is in this abominable Kundardaguator organ, satanic tail, where the whole leftist and sinister power of Kali, Circe or Holy Mary, is found contained. The adepts of black tantrism, such as the Bones and Dugpaw of Red Cap, develop in themselves that blind phohatic force of this cited fatal organ. Lycanthropy, the science of metamorphosis, commented on by Avidus, has always existed. Presently, and as incredible as it may seem, there still exist modern Circes in some corners of the world, in this present 20th century. As for scoundrels, pseudo-learned ones, those who believe to be filled with virtues, what does it matter to science or to us if they laugh? There exists an abundance of lycanthropy and modern Circes in the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, Mexico. We know the concrete case of a certain specimen who was a drunkard Don Juan, a certain remarkable gentleman who had the bad taste of having sexual relations with an ultramodern Circe of the New Age. It is clear by all means that such a Don Juan placed the whole starry heaven at this harpy's feet, painting rainbows in the sky for her, and making formidable promises to her. If you do not accomplish your pledged word, I will convert you into a donkey. Such was the cunning comment of the beautiful she-devil. Her lover laughed at what seemed to be a simple joke. Days were passing, and even weeks without this suburban Don Juan remotely thinking of accomplishing his romantic promises. But something unusual happened. On a given night, he did not return to his apartment. His roommate thought that perhaps Don Juan was fooling around somewhere, having found some new adventure. However, his absence was prolonged far too long, many nights passed and nothing. Finally, while preoccupied, he suddenly saw that instead of Don Juan, a donkey was appearing which was insisting to go inside the apartment. So, the good friend went to the streets in search of Don Juan. He interrogated the beautiful Circe, he inquired, and finally she told him, "Your friend is wandering around, behold him," and she pointed to the donkey. The guffaw, the malicious sarcasm, the thundering laughter of one of her friends, another very beautiful she-devil, was something definitive. This man comprehended everything. Later on, some good people advised him to leave from that place before it would become too late for him as well. So, the best thing which this poor man did was to return towards the capital city of Mexico. Chapter 28. Runes. It is urgent, indispensable, and unpostponable that we deeply study the problem of sexual transmutation for single people in this 1968 to 1969 Christmas message. Innumerable letters from many single students suffering from nocturnal pollutions are constantly arriving to this patriarchal headquarters of the Gnostic movement. Certainly, nocturnal pollutions are something filthy, dirty, and execrative. We always answer that the medicine against such subjective states is sexual magic, the Mithuna. However, we must clarify this matter. While we remain very alive. In other words, while we remain with the ego existing in the 49 regions of the subconsciousness, erotic dreams inevitably will continue. Nonetheless, to make light within the darkness, we must emphatically affirm that the Mithuna establishes an adequate foundation in order to avoid nocturnal pollutions, even when pornographic dreams continue. What occurs is that with the Sahaja Mithuna, sex yoga, the Chela, disciple, becomes accustomed to refraining the sexual impulse often. Therefore, when an erotic dream is produced, the mind refrains the sexual impulse by instinct. This is how we avoid what is called a nocturnal pollution or the lamentable loss of the vital liquor. It is clear, certain, and evident that such a formula helps when one has continuity of purpose. Thus, daily practice is needed, year after year, with intensity. Unfortunately, this formula only works when one has a spouse, but what about those who are single, who do not have a spouse? Then what? Here is precisely where the problem resides, and it is certainly very grave. If what we truly want is to utilize this formula, then what we need is to get a spouse. Now, let us pass into another very similar matter. I want to refer to sexual transmutation for single men and women. It would be lamentable if single men and women could not utilize the sexual energy in some way. They also need to progress. So how? Well, let us get to the roots, to the facts. I do not want to say that those who are single can self-realize themselves in depth. They cannot, because it is clear that without the Mithuna, it is more than impossible to reach the adepthood, which is so longed for. Nevertheless, those who are single can and must utilize the creative energy for the awakening of the consciousness. What we need to know is the technique, and this is precisely what this present chapter is committed to. Thus, let us now in full enter into the fields of the rune O's. This rune intensely vibrates with the constellation of the Scorpion, which is very important because this cord of stars is found intimately related with the sexual organs. This is the same rune Olin of Aztec Mexico, and it is esoterically related with the famous rune thorn. Among the Aztecs, Olin is the mystical symbol of the god of wind, the lord of the cosmic movement. The name of this angel is Ehecatl, the one who intervened in the resurrection of Jesus by transmitting prana, life into the body of the great Kabir and saying, "Jesus, rise with your body from within your tomb." I personally know the angel Ehecatl, the god of wind. He is certainly an extraordinary deva who lives in the world of the conscious will. So then, we can see the intimate existent esoteric relation between the rune O's and the rune thorn, movement and will. Albeit the many super-transcended stubborn ones from the worthless pseudo-esotericism and pseudo-occultism will laugh at the notion of elemental creatures of nature, considering them fantasy. Even when they mock and do scoff at Paracelsus and his elementals, such as gnomes, pygmies, sylphs, salamanders, etc., etc., these elementals have existed, do exist, and will always continue to exist, eternally. Ehecatl is certainly a guru deva who has power over the sylphs of the air. So, what if the foolish, obtuse, and stubborn do not like this? Do they laugh about elementals? Do they mock us? Frankly, we are not bothered by it, since he who laughs at what he does not know is an ignoramus who walks the path of idiocy. The millenary sphinx in the sacred land of the pharaohs corresponds to the elemental sphinx of nature, which is the mysterious instructor of the Holy Devic College. This elemental sphinx of ancient Egypt, which is so intimately related with the mysterious sphinx of stone, came to me when I was born in the world of conscious will. This elemental came with its feet covered with mud, so I exclaimed, "Your feet are filled with clay." It was clear. I understood everything. In this black age, which is governed by the goddess Kali, everything has been profaned, and no one wants to do anything with the sacred college of the Sphinx. When I, filled with love, wanted to kiss this elemental, she, the Sphinx, told me, "Kiss me with purity." This I did when kissing her cheek. Afterwards, the Sphinx returned to her point of departure, that is to say, to the sacred land of the pharaohs. All the Gnostic brethren would like to do the same thing, to talk face to face with the elemental sphinx of nature, to have a dialogue with the Devas, to walk with Ehecatl. But first of all, it is necessary to awaken the consciousness, to open the door, to call with persistency, to set in motion our willpower. Practice. Observe very carefully the two diagrams of the rune O's. In the same way that the rune Fa has its two arms upwards, the rune Olhin has them downwards, and this is profoundly significant. During these esoteric practices, there is the need to successively alternate movements by placing the arms in the first position, downwards, then, in the second position, placing the arms on our waist as in the rune Dorn or Torn. I repeat, examine very carefully the two diagrams of the rune O's. During these runic practices, you must combine the movement with harmonious and rhythmic breathing. Inhale the prana through the nose and exhale it through the mouth along with the mystic sound Torn, prolonging the pronunciation of each letter. When inhaling, imagine the sexual forces rising, ascending from the sexual glands throughout the pair of sympathetic nervous cords, which are known in India by the names of Ida and Pingla. These nerves or tubes reach the brain, then after they continue through other nerves towards the heart. These nerves are other channels, the Amrita Nadi is one among them. When exhaling, Imagine the sexual energies entering the heart and even penetrating more deeply, reaching to the consciousness in order to awaken it. Strike the consciousness with force, with thelema, willpower, thus combining the runes torn and movement. Afterwards, pray and meditate. Beseech the Father who is in secret, ask him to awaken your consciousness. Beseech your Divine Mother Kundalini, beg her with infinite love to raise, to make the sexual energies reach the heart and even further, to the very profound bottom of your consciousness. You must love and pray, meditate and supplicate. Build faith even the size of a grain of mustard seed, and you will be able to say unto a mountain, remove hence to a distant place, and it shall remove. Remember that doubt is the beginning of ignorance. Ask and it shall be given you, knock and it shall be opened unto you. Chapter 29. Origin of the pluralized I. My doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me. Listen to me, you must study in depth with your mind and your heart this revolutionary chapter of this 1968 to 1969 Christmas message. The Elohim, holy gods, produced man from themselves, by modification, in their likeness. He, the collective deity, created them, the collective humanity or Adam, male and female. The protoplasmatic root race from the sacred island, located in the Septentrion, was truly their first production. It was a tremendous transformation of themselves, the Elohim, and which was through themselves. These productions were pure spiritual existences. Behold here the Adam Solus. From this primeval polar root race, the second root race arose. The Adam Eve or Yadava, the Hyperborean people. The inactive androgynous. The third root race, the Lemurian people, arose always by modification, from the Hyperborean. This race was the separative hermaphrodite Cain and Abel, which lived upon the gigantic continent of Mu or Lemuria as it was later called, and that was situated in the Pacific Ocean. This third root race was the last semi-spiritual one. As well, it was the final vehicle of the pure, virginal, unbegotten, instinctive and innate esotericism of the Enochs, or the illuminated ones from that humanity. The separative hermaphrodite Cain and Abel produced the fourth root race of Seth Enos, which lived on the continent of Atlantis, situated in the Atlantic Ocean. Our actual Aryan root race, which perversely dwells upon the 5 continents of the world, arose from the Atlantean people. Each one of the 4 preceded root races perished from gigantic cataclysms, and our 5th root race will not be an exception. It has been said unto us that in a remote future, 2 more root races will exist upon the face of the earth. It is obvious that each one of them will have its own scenario. The primeval bisexual unity of the third human root race is an axiom of ancient wisdom. Its virginal individuals elevated themselves to the rank of gods, because these people were actually representing their divine dynasty. Certainly, the separation into opposite sexes was performed throughout various thousands of years, and this was a consummated fact at the end of the Lemurian root race. Let us now talk about Eden, of those paradisiacal jinn lands which the sacred individuals of Lemuria had continuous access to in the times in which the rivers of pure water of life were flowing milk and honey. This was the epoch of the Titans, when neither that which is mine and that which is yours existed. Everyone could collect fruits from the tree of the neighbor without any fear. This was the epoch of Arcadia, in which people were rendering cult to the gods of fire, air, water, and earth. This was the age of gold, when the lyre had not yet been smashed into pieces by falling upon the floor of the temple. Then, only the pure rising of the divine cosmic language, that as a river of gold runs under the thick jungle of the sun, was spoken. In that ancient age, people were very simple and innocent because the pluralized I was not born yet. They were rendering cult to the gods of the tender corn, and also to the ineffable creatures of rivers and forests. I knew the hermaphrodite Lemurian root race. Those terrible volcanoes which were in constant eruption come into my memory in these instants. What a time! All of us initiates were normally using very common sacerdotal vestures. Those sacred venerated vestures were splendidly standing out with white and black colors, which were symbolizing the tremendous struggle between the spirit and matter. It was exalting to admire and see those Lemurian giants with their noble vestures and their sandals which were displaying great tassels. The pituitary gland, the sixth sense, which is the light keeper and the page of the pineal gland, was displayed between the eyebrows of these colossuses. Then, the life of any individual had the average age of 12 to 15 centuries, so, gigantic cities were built, which were protected with enormous stones formed with lava volcanoes. I also knew the last times of the third root race. I lived in that epoch, which is cited in Genesis as being that ancient age in which Adam and Eve were cast out of Eden. In those times, humanity had already divided themselves into opposite sexes. The sexual act was then a sacrament which was only performed inside of the temples. In certain lunar epochs, the Lemurian tribes were performing long travels. They were departing on pilgrimages towards the holy places. With the purpose of multiplying the species, let us recall our honeymoon trips. We, all the Lemurians, were children born from willpower and yoga. Methuna was what we performed during the copulation, and no one was committing the error of ejaculating the entity of semen. The human seed always passed into the womb without the spilling of semen being necessary. The multiple combinations of this infinite substance are marvelous. The king and queen monarchs were sexually united before the very altar of the temple, and the multitudes were performing the copulation inside the sacred precinct and in the rocky patios filled with mysterious hieroglyphics. The holy gods were wisely directing those mystical ceremonies, which were indispensable for the reproduction of the human species. No one was thinking in perversity, since the pluralized I was not born yet. I was living in the country with my tribe, far away from those walled cyclopean cities. We were abiding in a big cabin, cottage, or hut. Close to our rounded palm-roofed residence, I remember with entire clarity that there was a military base where the warriors of our tribe were meeting. It happened that on a certain night, all of us, fascinated by a strange luciferic power, resolved to perform the sexual act out of the temple. Thus, each of the couples delivered ourselves to lust. Next day, in the morning, as if nothing had happened, we had the daring, the shame, the insolence, the impudence to present ourselves as usual in the temple. However, something unexpected and terrible happened. All of us saw a god of justice, a great master, dressed with a day-breaking and immaculate sacerdotal vesture. With a flaming sword which he was turning in every way to threaten us, he said, "Get out, you unworthy." It is clear that we then fled terrorized. Obviously, this event was repeated in all the corners of the enormous continent Mu. This is how the humanity Adam Eve was cast out from the Garden of Eden. Following this event, which is registered in the Genesis of all religions, horrifying epilogues were occurring. Millions of human creatures were developing the abominable Kundalini organ when they started to mix magic with fornication. Incidentally, it is useful to mention here Kali, the king of the serpents, the black magician, keeper of the temple of Kali, which is the fatal antithesis of the eternal mother space. Krishna saw with the magical conjuration of Kali a long blue-greenish reptile appearing. The fatal serpent slowly straightened its body, then horizontally it bristled its reddish mane, and its penetrating eyes frightfully flashed in its monstrous head of shining shells. "Better if you worship it, or you will perish," said the black magician. But the serpent died in the hands of Krishna. So, when Krishna heroically killed this great serpent, keeper of the temple of Kali, the goddess of desire, the mother of Cupid made ablutions and prayers for 1 month at the shores of the river Ganges. This viper from Kali is the tempting serpent of Eden, the horrible serpent Piton which is writhing in the mud of the earth and which Apollo enragedly hurt with his darts. It is indispensable to comprehend that such a sinister snake is without any doubt the tail of Satan, the abominable Kundalini organ. When the gods intervened, eliminating from the human species the cited fatal organ, the awful consequences of this tail of Satan remained within the 5 cylinders of the human machine: intellect, emotion, movement, instinct, and sex. It is obvious that such evil consequences from the abominable Kundalini organ constitute that which is called ego, the pluralized I. The myself, a tenebrous conjunction of perverse entities which personify all of our psychological defects. Therefore, the pluralized I is a granulated lunar, negative luciferic fohat. This fohatic satanic crystallization constitutes that which is called egg. Chapter 30. The Three Furies. Let us now talk about the three Furies who are gorged with all the poisons of the Gorgons. They wear hydras of the deepest green as girdles. Small serpents and cerastes form their hair, which are used to encircle their bestial temples. Listen to me, M. You must know once for all that these are the three traitors of Hiram Abiff. Majira is on the left, always dreadful and horrible. She who weeps upon the right is Alecto, in whose heart is hidden discord, fraud which produces disorder, and evil things which take away peace. Between them is Tisiphone. Each Fury tears at her breast with her repugnant nails, each with her palms beats on herself and wails so loud, just let Medusa come, then we shall turn him into stone. Looking down, they all cry we should have punished Theseus' assault. Remember, Gnostic brethren, that Mara is the lord of the five desires, the factor of death, and is an enemy of the truth. Who are they who always accompany him? Are not perhaps his three daughters the three Furies? Those tempting females? Are they not the ones, with all of their tenebrous legions, who assaulted the Buddha? Can perhaps Judas, Pilate, and Caiaphas be missed in the cosmic drama? Dante found Judas, Brutus, and Cassius in the ninth circle of the Infernos. Judas has his head inserted within the mouth of Lucifer and his legs jerk on the outside. The one who has his head beneath, the one who hangs from the second Luciferin mouth, is Brutus. He rides and does not say a word. The third traitor is Cassius, who seems to be so robust, but is very weak in depth. These are the three aspects of Judas, the three Furies. They are the demon of desire, the demon of the mind, and the demon of evil will. They are the three Upides, bases or lunar foundations, which are within each human being. Let us think of the three presences of the guardian of the threshold within the interior of each person. The Apocalypse says, "And I saw three unclean spirits like frogs came out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth, and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty." But who is the dragon? Who is the beast? Who is the false prophet? Gods, tell me, where is he? If we comprehend that he is Mara, Lucifer, the blind fohatic force from the abominable Kundartagwaiter organ, or the sexual negative fire, which is the father of the three Furies, then we are not mistaken. Thus, the vile slug which passes through the heart of the world is the root of the pluralized I. He is the foundation of the three Furies. Lucifer Mara, the tempter, with all of his legion of devil egosas that each mortal carries. Within is the origin of the three sufferings, oldness, sickness, and death. If the negative aspect of the goddess Juno would not have intervened in Latium by arousing Alecto, the most abhorred one among the Furies, then the marriage of Aeneas, the illustrious Trojan man, with the daughter of the good King Latinus, would not have been preceded by a war. Do this service for me, O virgin daughter of night. It is task after your own heart. See to it that my fame and the honor in which I am held are not impaired or slighted, and see to it that Aeneas and his men do not win Latinus over with their offers of marriage and are not allowed to settle on Italian soil. You can take brothers who love each other and set them at each other's throats. You can turn a house against itself in hatred and fill it with whips and funeral torches. You have 1,000 names and 1,000 ways of causing hurt. Your heart is teeming with them. Shake them out. Shatter this peace they have agreed between them, and sow the seeds of recrimination and war. Make their young men long for weapons, demand them seize them. Alas, O God of mine! What pain! This frightful fury of the mind presented herself within the royal chamber of the Queen Amida and drove in her ideas of protest and rebellion against the will of the King Latinus. Under the perfidious influence of Alecto, the Queen Amida desperately left the palace and swiftly as any Bacchante ran through the middle of the Italian mountains. She danced and jumped as any Bacchante. She seemed to be a furious Menade in a wild mad rage, driven with the lash of Bacchus. Amata, the sovereign, protested with indignation before the monarch. She did not want to do the will of her lord and defend Turnus, a young Greek suitor who was the son of a people, which in aforetime were assaulting the unconquerable walls of Troy. The queen was afraid that Aeneas would flee with her daughter far away from Latium. She felt the pain of losing her daughter and cried. Albeit the work of Alecto still did not finish here. She flew straight to the abode of the bold Prince Turnus. Alecto changed her appearance and took on the face of an old woman with a viperine tongue, and told him everything that was happening inside the palace of the king. Thus, the insinuating and evil Alecto awoke the jealousy of the young prince. Afterwards came the war, and the young prince fought for his lady, the beautiful Lavinia, the precious daughter of good King Latinus. The monarch did not want war, neither was he himself the one who opened the doors of the temple of Janus, Janos, the Bifrontes god. His enraged people were the ones who opened them. Inside the temple of Janus, the doctrine of Saturn was preserved. This was the primeval, original revelation of the jinns. So, this temple was only opened in a time of war. This is how the war was lit among the Rutulians. When this repugnant fury Alecto ended her work, she flew down within the innermost parts of the frightful abyss through the mouth of a dry volcano, which was once in a while spitting the fetid vapors of death. In a short time, she arrived to the sinister banks which surrounded the waters of the Cocytus. Turnus, the new Achilles, died at the hands of Aeneas, who became married to Lavinia, daughter of the king Latinus. Nevertheless, O God, Alecto as ever, still is lighting bonfires of discord everywhere, and millions of human beings cast themselves to war. Ah, if people would comprehend that each one of them carries Alecto within themselves. Unfortunately, the human creatures are profoundly asleep. They do not comprehend anything. Chapter 31. Rune Retha. Coming into my memory in these instants are scenes of a previous reincarnation of mine during the Middle Ages. I was living in Austria, in accordance with the customs of that epoch. I do not deny that I was a member of an illustrious family of aristocratic rank. In that epoch, my people, my lineage were very conceited about matters of royal blood related with rigid ascendancy and notable ancestry. I feel ashamed, yet I must confess, and this is what is critical in this matter, that I also was engulfed within the bottle of those social prejudices. The matters of that epoch. One given day, it does not matter which. A sister of mine became in love with a very poor man, and of course, this was the scandal of the century. The ladies of the class of nobles, and their stubborn little fops, dandies, dudes, peacocks, and coxcombs, came to skin alive the neighbor. They scoffed at my unhappy sister. They said that she had disgraced the honor of the family, and that she could have married better, etc. It did not take long for my poor sister to become a widow, but the outcome of her love was clearly a child. What if she would have wanted to return into the bosom of her family? It was not possible. She greatly knew the viperine tongue of those elegant ladies, their fastidious counterpoints, their disregard. Therefore, she preferred an independent life. Did I help the widow? It would be an absurdity to deny it. Did I have pity on my nephew? That is true. Unfortunately, there are times when one is trying not to be a person without pity, yet one becomes pitiless. That was my case. Feeling pity on the child, I put him in a boarding school with the pretext that he could receive a strong, firm, and vigorous education, without taking into account the feelings of his mother, and I even committed the error of prohibiting this suffering woman to visit her son. I thought that in this way my nephew would not receive any type of harm, so he could become someone else later, that is to say, to become a great gentleman, etc. The path which leads to the abyss is paved with good intentions. True? Yes, it is true. How many times when one is trying to do good, one accomplishes evil? My intentions were good, but my actions were mistaken. Nonetheless, I was firmly believing that I was doing the right thing. My sister was suffering greatly because of the absence of her son, and she could not even see him at the college, as this was prohibited for her. By all means, it is clear that from my part there was love for my nephew and cruelty for my sister. However, I thought that if I was helping the son, I would also be helping his mother. Fortunately, as if by magic, the police of karma, the Kaum, emerge inside each one of us, within those intimate regions where love is missing. To flee from the agents of karma is not possible, since inside of each one of us exists the police who inevitably will conduce us towards the tribunals. Many centuries have passed since that epoch. All of the personages from that drama became old and they died. However, the law of reoccurrence is terrible, because everything is repeated as it once happened, along with its consequences. In the 20th century, we, all the actors of that past event, have re-encountered ourselves again. Everything has been repeated in a certain way, but it is clear that it has been with consequences. This time I was the one who was repudiated by the family. Such is the law. My sister re-encountered her husband anew. I do not reject the fact that I am united again with my ancient priestess spouse, known with the name of Lytalantes. The so adored and fought over nephew became reborn again, this time with a feminine body. She, by the way, is a very beautiful girl. Her face seems to be a very delightful night, and the stars shine in her eyes. One time, the date does not matter now, we were living next to the sea. The girl, my ancient nephew, could not play as she was grievously ill with an intestinal infection. It was a very delicate situation, as various children of her age died in that epoch because of the same cause. Why should my daughter be an exception? The numerous remedies which were administered to her frankly were useless. In her infantile face, the unmistakable profile of death was already starting to be drawn with horror. By all means the failure was standing out, the case was lost, and I did not have any other chance than to visit the dragon of the law, the terrible genie of karma whose name is Anubis. Fortunately, thanks be given to God, we, Lytalantes and I, know how to consciously and positively travel in the astral body. Therefore, it was not a problem for us to present ourselves together in the palace of this great archon, within the parallel universe of the fifth dimension. That temple of karma is impressive, majestic, and grandiose. The hierarch was there, seated on his throne, imposing, and terribly divine. Anyone would be frightened to see him officiating with that sacred mask of a jackal, just as he appears in many embossments of the ancient Egypt of the pharaohs. Finally, the opportunity to talk to him was granted to me. And clearly, I did not let it pass away so easily. You have a debt with me. I told him. Which one? He answered astonished. Then, completely satisfied, I introduced to him a man who in aforetime was a perverse demon. I am referring to Astaroth, the great duke. This was a lost son for the father, I continued, saying unto him, nonetheless, I saved him, by showing him the path of the light, I took him out of the Black Lodge, and now he is a disciple of the White Brotherhood. And you did not pay me this debt. The case was that this daughter of mine had to die in accordance with the law, and her soul was to penetrate within the womb of my sister in order to form a new physical body for my daughter. This is how I understood it. Therefore, I added, I ask that Astaroth can go into the womb of my sister instead of the soul of my daughter. The solemn answer of this hierarch was definitive. Granted, let Astaroth go into the womb of your sister, and let your daughter be healed. Therefore, that girl, my ancient nephew, was miraculously healed. And then my sister begot a male child. I had capital in order to pay that debt. I had cosmic capital. The law of karma is not a blind mechanical law, as many pseudo-esoterists and pseudo-suppose. As these matters show, it becomes evident and easy to comprehend that with the possible death of my daughter, I had to feel the same pain of detachment, the same bitterness which in an ancient epoch my sister was feeling for the loss of her son. Thus, by means of the great law, the damage would be compensated, with the repetition of similar scenes. However, this time I would be the victim. Fortunately, karma is negotiable. This law is not the blind mechanicalism of the astrologers and chiromancers of fairs. I had cosmic capital, so I paid that old debt. Thus, thanks to God, it was possible for me to avoid the bitterness which was awaiting for me. When will the people comprehend all of the mysteries of the rune Retha? Certainly, this is the rune of the law. Retha comes to remind us of the words, reason, role, religion, right. The Roman law has the scale and the sword as symbols of justice. It is then not too strange that inside the palace of Anubis, the great archon of the law, scales and swords are seen everywhere. This great judge is assisted in his work by 42 judges of the law. Illustrious lawyers of the great law, who defend us when we have enough cosmic capital in order to pay our old debts, are never absent before the tribunal of karma. To get credits with the lords of the law or archivists of destiny is also possible, but these must be paid with good deeds, through working for humanity, or based upon supreme pain. Practice. The fundamental mantras of the rune Retha are Ra, Re, Re, Ro, Ru. In the rune F, we had to raise the arms. In the rune U, we opened the legs. In the rune D, we placed the arm on our waist. In the rune O, the legs were open and the arms upon the waist. So, in the present rune Retha we must open one leg and one arm. Thus, in this position, the Gnostic students will see that they in themselves are forming the runic letters, such as they are written. The present runic practice has the power of liberating the internal judgment. We need to convert ourselves into judges of consciousness. To awaken the Buddhata, the soul is urgent. The present rune has the power of awakening the consciousness of the judges. Let us remember what is called remorse, which certainly is the accusing voice of the consciousness. Those who never feel remorse are truly very far from their interior judge. Commonly, they are lost cases. People like that must work very intensely with the rune Rita. Thus, this is how they will liberate their interior judgment. We need with urgency to learn how to be guided by the voice of the silence, that is to say, by the intimate judge. Karma is being paid not only for the evil that is done, but also for the good that could be done, yet is left undone. Chapter 32. The Divine Mother Kundalini. Oh, ineffable muses! Inspire me. Here shall your excellence reveal itself so that my style does not retract from the nature of this matter. Oh, Divine Mother Kundalini! You are Venus, Lady of Mine. You are Hiva, Isis, Sophia Karnath, Parvati, Uma, Tonatsin, Ray, Sibylis, Mary. Or better if called Ram, E.O. O Devi Kundalini. You are Adshante, Rajeshvari, Adonia, Insobertha, Tripurasundari, Mahalakshmi, Mahasarasvati. By all means, without the O adorable mother, the manifestation of prana, electricity, magnetic force, molecular cohesion, and cosmic gravitation is something more than impossible. You are the Matra Padma, the Devamatri, Aditi or cosmic space, the mother of the gods. You have, O eternal mother space, 3 luminous aspects during cosmic manifestation and 2 antitheses. May humans listen to me. It is said that each living being has his own Devi Kundalini, his own particular divine mother. To truly eliminate the aham krita bhava, the egoic condition from our consciousness, would be absolutely impossible if we commit the crime of forgetting our own divine mother Kundalini. The intellectual animal mistakenly called man is nothing else but a compound of aggregates which sooner or later must become cosmic dust. The only thing eternal within ourselves is the intimate Buddha, and truly he is found beyond the body, mind, and affections. To eliminate the vain and perishable aggregates is something cardinal and definitive in order to awaken the consciousness. These aggregates are certainly those entities or tenebrous egos which dwell within the 5 cylinders of the human machine. We explained, we already stated with complete clarity in our former Christmas messages that the 5 cylinders of the human machine are intellect, emotion, movement, instinct, and sex. Let us concretize that these devil eyes constitute the ego, pluralized I. So, the consciousness sleeps within each one of them. In order to awaken consciousness, it is vital to eliminate those egos. Those entities, those aggregates which personify our defects. Thus, we attain the Atman Vidya, the complete illumination. To have deep comprehension, clear consciousness of the defect which we want to extirpate is fundamental, but it is not enough. The elimination of it is necessary, and this is only possible with the help of the Kundalini. The mind cannot fundamentally alter anything. What the mind does is label things, hide defects, pass them on to other levels, etc. To eliminate errors is another thing, and without Devi Kundalini, the magic serpent of our magical powers, this would be something absolutely impossible. One given night, the day and hour does not matter. I was traveling with my astral body within the parallel universe of the fifth dimension. Then, while inebriated by a certain spiritual voluptuousness, I ecstatically arrived before the mysterious threshold of that marvelous temple of the twice-born. The hieratic and terrific guardian of the great mysteries, as always, was at the door, and when I wanted to enter, something unusual happened. While fixedly looking at me, he said with a severe voice, among a group of brethren who have worked in the ninth sphere, and who after having worked in that region, presented themselves in this temple, you were the most advanced one. But now you are stagnant in your progress. Those words, pronounced with too much severity by the guardian at the threshold of the mystery, certainly left me perplexed, confused, and indecisive. I could think of nothing else but to ask, why? Then, the hierarch answered my question, because of your lack of love. How come? I said, I love humanity, I am working for all the human beings. I do not understand what you are telling me. In which way am I lacking love? You have forgotten your mother, you are an ungrateful son, explained the guardian, and the way in which he intoned these words, I confess, produced in me not only pain, but moreover terror. But I do not know where she is, I have a long time without seeing her. I replied, believing that it was all related with my physical mother, who I had to leave when I was still very young. How is it possible that a son does not know where his mother is? Replied to the guardian. Then, he continued saying, I am telling you this for your own good. Because otherwise you are aggravating yourself. Truly, I confess that only after various days of useless inquiring in order to find in this world my terrene mother, I finally understood the enigmatic words of the guardian of the temple. Ah, but the literature of a pseudo-esoteric and pseudo-occultist type, which is so abundant in the market, says nothing about this matter. If only I would have known this before. To that end, I thought too many things, and then I prayed. To pray is to talk with God, and I, in secrecy, prayed to the eternal feminine, to God as mother. Then, I knew that each creature has his own particular divine mother. And I even knew the secret name of my own. It is clear that in that epoch I was suffering the unutterable when dissolving the ego, struggling in order to reduce it to cosmic dust. What is the most terrible is that I had already reached the second birth. I comprehended very well that if I did not achieve death within myself, I would fail by converting myself into an abortion of the cosmic mother, into a Hanasmussen with a double center of gravity. It seemed in that time that my efforts were useless. I was failing the ordeals, and if I would have continued like that, it is clear that complete failure would have been inevitable. Fortunately, thanks to God, the guardian of the temple knew how to warn me and advise me. The work was terrible. The failed ordeals were indicating to me with exactitude where the faults were. Each ordeal was enough in order to indicate to me, to point to me the basic defect, the error. The meditation on each error was enough for the comprehension. Although, I could clearly evidence that there are many degrees and degrees in relation with understanding. There is too much elasticity and ductility in relation with comprehension. Many times, we believe to have integrally comprehended a defect of a psychological type, but only later, we come to discover that really, we did not comprehend it. To eliminate it is another thing. Anyone can comprehend a given defect, yet in spite of this cannot achieve its extirpation. If we exclude the Divine Mother Kundalini, then the work becomes incomplete. Without her it would be impossible to eliminate defects. Frankly, I converted myself into an enemy of myself, thus, I resolved to equilibrate comprehension and elimination. Each comprehended defect was eliminated with the power of the Divine Mother Kundalini. Finally, one given day, I was inspecting my work in the Tartarus. In the Averno, within the submerged mineral kingdom, in those infradimensional regions or submerged parallel universes. Navigating upon the waters of the Acheron, inside of the boat of Sharon. I arrived to the other shore in order to inspect the work, then I saw thousands of devil egos, my own aggregates, parts of myself which were living in those regions. I wanted to resuscitate something, an effigy which was symbolizing my own sinning Adam, who was lying down as a cadaver within the muddy waters of the river. Then, my Divine Mother, dressed with a mourning suit, like a Mater Dolorosa, told me with her voice filled with infinite love, "This one is already well dead. I have nothing more to take from him." Certainly, my mother had extracted from me all of the legion of devils. All of the conjunction of tenebrous entities which personify our defects and that constitute the ego. Thus, this is how I achieved the dissolution of the pluralized I. This is how I attained the reduction into dust of all of those aggregates which form the myself. Chapter 33. The Forge of the Cyclops. When Venus, the Divine Mother Kundalini, begged help to Vulcan on behalf of her son Aeneas, she taught with it the clue of the intimate self-realization. The goddess said, "Listen to me, you who forge the indomitable iron with the fires of the center of the earth. When the citadel of Troy was being ravaged in war by the kings of Greece, it was owed to fate and was doomed to fall in the fires lit by its enemies. But I asked for nothing for those who suffered. I did not call upon the help of your art to make arms for them. You yielded to Thetis, the daughter of Nereus, you yielded to the W of Tithonus when they came and wept to you. Look at all the nations gathering. Look at the walled cities that have closed their gates and sharpening their swords against Aeneas to destroy those I love. Although I owed much to the sons of Priam and had often wept at the sufferings endured by Aeneas, I did not wish, O my dearest husband, that you should exert yourself to no purpose. But now, in obedience to the commands of Jupiter, Aeneas is standing in Rutulian soil, and so now I come to you as a suppliant. I approach that Godhead which I so revere, and as mother. I ask you to make arms for my son Aeneas. He is not a destroyer, is only trying to defend himself against those who threaten his purposes of fertile peace. Oh, you! The ones who courageously descend into the Averno in order to work in the flaming forge of Vulcan, the sex, listen to me. The fetus remains 9 months within the maternal womb, and 9 months remained this entire humanity within the womb of Re, Ceres, Cybele, Isis, the cosmic mother. Vulcan works within the 9th circle of Inferno, forging the indomitable iron with the living fires of this planetary organism. People with thelema, willpower, men and women with a willpower of steel, you must work without rest within the 9th sphere, the sex. Venus, the Divine Mother Kundalini is, has been, and always will be the priestess spouse of Vulcan, the third Logos, the Holy Spirit. The ignispotent god of fire descends from the marvelous heights of heaven into the terrible forge of the Cyclops. With a great voice he demands for the presence of his 3 brothers Brontes, Sterope and Pyracmon, who are living symbols of the elemental creatures of the air, the waters, and the perf-timed earth. The work in the forge of the Cyclops, the sex, is terrific. Here, the tempestuous lightning, the secret forces of the storm, as well as the hurricane-like winds collaborate in the effort. Here lead is transmuted into gold, and the steel of the flaming sword is tempered. Here the gigantic protector shield of the soul is forged. Such a shield will be enough in order to stop the strikes of the most terrible tenebrous armies. It is an Argentine armor, a splendid shield formed with transformative atoms of a high voltage, which reside within the seminal system. It is a divine auric shield, which is septenary within the intimate constitution of the true man. The sexual cavern trembles under the erotic pressure of the bellow during the Methuna, and strong, sweaty arms strike the anvil with a rhythmic effort. Aeneas looked like a god while challenging the arrogant Laurentians and the impetuous Turnus to combat. When rejoicing with the gifts of his divine mother, Aeneas dressed himself with weapons made by Vulcan. Behold here the solar bodies, the terrific crested and fire-spurting helmet, the flaming sword and the huge, unyielding breastplate of blood-red bronze, as well as the polished greaves and the fabric of the shield engraved with innumerable figures. There, on that auric luminous shield, Vulcan, the third Logos, the Holy Spirit, with his knowledge of the prophets engraved astonishing prophetic scenes. The scenes of all the generation that would spring from Ascanius were gloriously shining on that shield. As well, Vulcan had made a mother wolf which milked Romulus and Remus, and showed the first of these twin brothers, dear God, performing the violent rape of the Sabines. Also depicted was the bloody war both brothers would fight. Ah! If only people would understand the mystery of these twin brothers. Point one lone soul in two distinct persons. The Buddhata divided in two, and of course incarnated in two different personalities. Romulus and Remus milked by the she-wolf of the law. Is a soul with two men, two persons, two bodies. The gods know very well that it is possible to live simultaneously in different distinct times and places. How much wisdom had Vulcan engraved in the brilliant aura of Aeneas? How many prophesies? Behold, men and gods, that there was also on this shield the scenes of Porsenna ordering the Romans to take Tarquin back within the unconquerable walls of the city after they had expelled him. On the summit of the sharpened shield, you could also see the scene of the golden goose fluttering, honking for help against the Gauls who were trying to invade the Roman capital. Observe and see the Salii priests with their Martian dances and their conical warrior hats, their chaste matrons in their cushioned carriages. The traitor Catiline tormented in the Averno, the pale faces of the Furies. There too was Cato, the wise administrator of justice, the armored fleets of war, Augustus Caesar, Agrippa with favoring winds and favoring gods. Mark Antony and Cleopatra, Anubis the lord of the law, Neptune. Venus and Minerva, the goddess of wisdom. Finally, O God, were the scenes of Caesar riding into the walls of Rome in victory. The defeated nations walking in long lines as slaves, a wealthy booty. Golden thrones, defeated kings. Thank you for listening.